All right, one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride in on this Friday morning from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center. Couple of accidents to report. One at I-20 westbound after exit 110 with 2 right lanes blocked. Another one at Fairmont and Mayburn. Another one at South Lake Drive and I-20. 2 Notch Road in Alpine. And a second accident up here at South Lake Drive and I-20 as well. Today, hot and humid, going to be 92 degrees. Tomorrow, 94 with some clouds and a potential for an afternoon thunderstorm. And then Sunday, cloudy with afternoon thunderstorms as well with a high of 87. That's your traffic and weather from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center here on the early game. Nine o'clock on your Friday morning. Welcome in, Extra Point. Tower Head, Jack Beltry, congratulations. You've made it to the end of the week. Jack, I hope you got some good rest yesterday afternoon.
I did not. I was not able to take a nap, but you know what? It is what it is.
You got the weekend ahead.
Yeah, I got the weekend to kind of rest my body and recover, and so did sleep fairly well last night, though. I will
good.
say that.
Did you crash out early?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was definitely tired last night and could feel it, but I feel a lot better this morning. So
That's good.
Yeah.
Wild Sports Night. We'll get into all the happenings in a moment. But you want to know the first thing I did today when I woke up?
What's that?
I went to Spotify, looked up Glorilla, because I wanted to see if Xavier Leggett was going to rap on her new single. He did not. I believe it's about him. So have you seen the stuff?
So I've seen the cover, and I got to admit, it does look tough.
It does. That goes hard.
Yeah.
And the song seems to be about him. If you listen to it, it's very vulgar. I can't play it on the radio. If you listen to Glorilla, you know that. But when you listen to lyrics, I'm like, sounds like she's talking about him. I was hoping, though, we'd at least get like a line or a verse from him rapping on it, but I didn't get that.
Would we be able to understand it, though?
But that's the thing is, like, she's also very hard to understand.
Well,
like, that's why I think, and like, I don't know if, are they in a relationship now? I don't know all the ins and outs. I just know he's on the album cover, and the song seems to be about him. But, like, I can't think of two people that could understand each other more than Xavier Leggett and Glorilla.
They're perfect for each other.
They really are.
So I will be taking a listen to this song after the hour here.
It's
driving back.
2 minutes. It's if you've listened to Glorilla, it sounds like a Glorilla song.
I don't believe, I'm going to be quite honest, I don't even know if I have heard of Glorilla before yesterday.
My wife is a really big fan.
Okay.
I bought her a T-shirt of Glorilla for Christmas this past year. That's how big of a fan she is.
So for this Christmas now, you're going to be getting the T-shirt with the album cover on it.
Honestly, that might be, actually her birthday's coming up next month. Wait, do you guys have the same birthday?
What's hers?
July 4th?
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Mine too.
that's what I thought. I was like, I think I remember you guys having the same birthday.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Gotta love the patriotic babies.
Post Malone also has a July 4th
That's
birthday.
right, Post Malone. America also has a 4th of July birthday.
America is fourth on the list of that.
Yes.
It's y'all three and then America.
Yes. So us three and then America.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Next year, 250 years, believe it or not.
Yeah. Get ready. Start the planning.
The planning. The funny thing is, I'm already seeing commercials for 250.
I want to know, like, what is actually planned for, like,
That's
a huge deal, to be honest. Like, 250.
Yeah. Something big. I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is either.
I feel like we kind of do 4th of July pretty big anyway.
Yeah.
So how much bigger can you make it?
And so 200 would have been what? 1976?
Yeah, bicentennial.
So, I mean, none of us were alive for that. A lot of people were.
My dad graduated high school that year, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you'll have to ask him, like, hey, what was the bicentennial
like?
celebration like?
See if we can get an idea of what would 250 be? Buy and a half?
Yeah, I don't know what the technical term for it would be.
I don't think there is a term for 250.
It's
You're quarter to 1,000,
yeah,
quarter of the way there.
halfway to 300.
Well, halfway to 300 would be 150.
Oh well,
Well, you're halfway between a
Half-
buy and a try.
you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Anyways, a lot of things happening in the sports world last night. We'll dive into all that in just a second. But first, it is 9 o'clock. Time for our Sandstorm Pick Me Up.
Time to get hyped.
Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm.
Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick Me Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803 all nines.
Smith. The Pacers with a chance to win it. Final seconds, no fouls to give. Halliburton looking. Halliburton driving, pulls up, jump shot. It's good! It's good! With 3/10 of a second remaining. Timeout, OKC. Tyrese Halliburton does it again.
Did you ever watch Breaking Bad?
I've seen clips, but I have not seen Breaking Bad.
Are you at least familiar with the clip of Jesse, Aaron Paul's character, screaming, "You can't keep getting away with this"?
Yeah, oh yeah, I've seen that.
That's got to be how people are feeling about Tyrese Halliburton, especially in Oklahoma City. The run the Pacers have been on and what Halliburton in his own run has done in the final seconds of playoff games is absolutely insane, culminating last night with that winner at 0.3 seconds left. That was the only time they led the entire night, and they won the game.
So let's see. He did it last night. He did it against the Knicks. He had another one, didn't he? He had another.
Was it Cleveland?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was Cleveland.
There's so many, I'm losing count.
It's insane the things that he does. I mean, he's just such a good player. Now, the flip side of it, OKC was leading by, let's see, they were
They
leading
had a
by 12.
15-point lead.
Yeah, 12 at halftime, 15 with 9:42 left in the fourth quarter. And they were up by, they had the lead, they had a 9-point lead with 2.5 minutes left to go. I mean,
It's got
insane.
It got to the point because I think we all knew going into this series, like Oklahoma City's the better team, right? And I still think the majority of people think they're still going to win the series when it's all said and done with. Because again, you got to still win 4 games at the end of the day. But when you are watching the game last night, and they kept forcing turnovers. That was the thing. Like, Indiana couldn't hold on to the ball. When they finally did, they started making their comeback. But I was switching back and forth between this and the Women's College World Series, and it almost got to the point where I didn't feel the need to go back to the finals because I'm like, okay, OKC's got this kind of wrapped up. They're just going to kind of cruise through the back half of the second half and win this thing. But as I'm kind of watching the score at the bottom of the screen, I'm like, they're down to 8, down to 6, it's down to 5. Okay, all right, I'll check back in, and then you just see this. And when OKC missed their, I guess, next to last shot, and Indiana got the rebound, and it went into Halliburton's hands, I was like, well, he's going to make it. Mm-hmm. He's become that guy now.
He's got ice water in his veins. And, we said the same thing about, or I think we talked about it. I mean, the Knicks game 1 in the Garden. The Knicks are up by can't remember how much, 15 points. And it's like, all right, they're going to win this thing, right?
Sure.
Turn the game off, whatever, go watch something else, go, enjoy your time doing other things. And then it's like, man, turn the game back on. Pacers are coming back, and it gets crazy. And then it looks like Halliburton hits that 3, but it ended up being a 2 because his foot was on the line. So it's just you can't count the Pacers out. I mean, they're a gritty, scrappy team, and it all starts with Tyrese Halliburton.
And again, OKC's so good on defense. They forced 21 turnovers through the first 3 quarters last night, but only forced 3 in the fourth quarter.
It's a big deal.
Indiana shot 50% from the field in the fourth quarter.
That's the difference right there.
There's your difference.
That is the clear difference right there. But I think the Thunder are going to be all right. It's just, I think we probably said the same thing about the Knicks after they lost game 1. It's like, all right, they're going to be all right. But what if they lose game? What if the Thunder lose game 2? Because then you have to go back to Indiana down 2-0.
And that was the thing is okay, if Indiana wants any chance in this, they're going to have to find a way to steal a game in OKC, which they've already done. And again, well, I don't know how much you believe in momentum. Do they have the momentum on their side going into game 2?
I still think the Thunder are going to win game 2. I think the Thunder are going to be fine because they've had the tougher path, I think, to get here.
Sure.
Again, being in the Western Conference kind of allows for that. But, with the Pacers, I mean, they just don't give up. That's the big thing. Like, even when they're committing as many, I mean, they committed 20 turnovers in the first half. We're not shooting super well. But, I mean, again, that fourth quarter performance, it's like, that's the stuff that's going to look real great on the DVD for the championship if they end up getting there.
I also think, and this is one of my biggest gripes with the NBA Finals, is, and I get it, rest days, that's fine. You want to have a day off between games? Okay, sure. 2 days off, though? Like, look, the playoffs themselves already last so freaking long. We've been doing this for like 8 months now.
It's been going on since like April.
It feels that way. And if the finals go all the way to a game 7, you're talking about 2.5 weeks. Like it's ridiculous. And like, okay, fine. When you're making the trip back to Indiana to play, the middle games of the series, okay, fine. You want to build an extra day in for that, for rest and travel and all that, that's fine. But it's ridiculous to me that game 2 is not tomorrow night. You know what I mean? It's not till Sunday.
They're milking it.
Of course they're going to milk it.
They're milking it.
But I also think that's detrimental to the league as well.
Yes.
Because you have this amazing, crazy game number 1. And again, this was a series, and I know we bring up media markets and stuff too much, but this was not a series that necessarily appeals to the casual basketball fan, right? But if they see, hey, wow, that game was crazy. Halliburton hit another crazy shot. I can't wait to tune into game 2. You have them hooked, right? You got to get them back in immediately. Now they're waiting another 3 days to see game number 2. I feel like you lose a lot of people when you do that.
No, and it's just kind of ridiculous because you look at the next 2 games after game 2. Game 3 is on Wednesday, and then game 4 is on Friday. That makes sense. Like having the extra rest day to go to Indiana, that's expected. But to have 2 days off in between when all postseason long, correct me if I'm wrong, you've only had 1 day off in between games 1 and 2 typically.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is this typically just 1 day off between games, which, okay, that's fine. I do wish they'd play more back-to-back so we could get this thing going a little bit quicker, but okay, that's fine. But again, having an extra day after game number 1, after these teams have already been off for a week, for the most part, like again, they've already had a ton of rest days. I'm sure Indiana's been in OKC for a couple days practicing and everything.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's necessary to do that right from the jump.
Just 1 day off in between is fine.
Yes, please.
Come on.
And again, when you're talking about captivating an audience, we talk about like college football, right? When you had the national championship on like January 20th, a lot of people forgot it was on. Us, like that day, we're like, oh yeah, the national championship is tonight, because you had such a gap between the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and the national championship. Playoffs are good at being concise. Mm-hmm. Baseball does it phenomenally. Yep. It's boom, 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 all done in a month, right? Football in the NFL, 1 week after the next, after the next, after the next. Yeah, you have 2 weeks off between the conference championships and the Super Bowl, but for the most part, it's one right after the other. Like, that's what's aggravating about basketball, is it gets stretched out so long, and we make it even longer when we get to the finals.
Can you imagine if baseball was like this?
Oh my God, we'd be playing.
We'd be going
into
into Christmas.
It feels that way.
It's just kind of insane. I understand the whole rest and stuff, but 2 days off in between game 1 and 2 is a little
silly.
Yeah. So, and it's on a Sunday night. Have it on a Saturday night. I mean, come on.
I think technically you get better ratings on Sunday nights, which may be the...
I guess you do, but...
because people are more apt, especially in the summertime, to be out and about on a Saturday. Like, at least Sunday, you're getting ready for work the next day. You're more likely to be at home, which maybe plays into why they do this. And again, TV controls everything at the end of the day. Yeah. But maybe that's why it is like that. But again, it just seems ridiculous to me.
Whatever. We'll be tuned in either way.
Either way, again, a fun start, because I think a lot of people thought this was just going to be a runaway. Like, okay, OKC. And again, for most of last night's game, they're managing like a 10 to 12-point gap. It's like, all right, they're just the better team. Most games are probably going to go like this. And, hey, Indiana, great story, great run, but you just ran into a better team. Now it's like, okay, Indiana's got a leg up. What happens now?
This is going to be a good series. Like, if you're not watching, like, I'm interested to see what the viewership will be on this series whenever that does come out. But, like, I think this is going to be a really entertaining series. So I'm looking forward to how this all plays out the rest of the way.
Again, Game 2 coming up on Sunday night at 8 o'clock, which you can watch, of course, on ABC. Another wild night last night for the Women's College World Series. The series has been evened up by Texas Tech. We'll dive into that coming up next as well. Going as the X Point rolls along, Tyler and Jack on your Friday here on The Game.
Here's the 0-2. Got her. Kennedy delivers in the biggest moment. Preserves the lead and evens the championship series at 1 game apiece. 4-3 Red Raiders the final. And we've got a game 3 tomorrow night in Oklahoma City.
Let's call last night on ESPN. Women's College World Series. Texas Tech does even the game up, or even the series up, excuse me, with the 4-3 win over the Texas Longhorns. And, of course, Nigel Kennedy, another phenomenal performance last night, getting that key strikeout there in the top of the 7th inning to seal things. She goes 7 innings, giving up 6 hits and only 2 earned runs in that game last night. Not to be outdone, by all the other things that she's done this season, but it's so interesting because I go back to the offseason, and you may have heard the story about her getting the $1 million to go to Texas Tech from Stanford, and Patrick Mahomes, who was at the game last night cheering on the Red Raiders, was a big part of that, and the people at Adidas and all that kind of stuff to literally get somebody that they felt could help carry this program that had never been this far before. Like, this is not a rich program when it comes to softball success, but they went out there, they got a game-changing type player who can both hit and pitch super well, and she's leading the team in just about every single category, and she's leading this team potentially to a national championship if they can win tonight.
That's what you need. That's what you need. You need the stars to step up and come through in the biggest moments, and that's what we're seeing from her right now. And it has been a very entertaining series so far, and glad we're getting a game through with this one. And it seems like the general public, the world is very interested in this series so far.
It's I don't know. Women's sports in general have obviously upticked these past couple of years. We talk about the effect that the Caitlin Clarks and stuff had on women's basketball, and you still see a strong number when it comes to the viewership from this past season. When South Carolina played UConn for the national championship, and I don't know if it's just ESPN giving it more exposure or what it is, but it does seem like these kind of things are being put in more of the national spotlight than ever before. And again, women's softball has been around forever. You've obviously had Oklahoma dominating it the past couple of years. Maybe it's the fact that you're going to crown a new champion. Maybe people have got kind of used to Oklahoma just being at the top, and it's kind of okay, well, Oklahoma's in it, they're going to win it. But have two teams that had to get through Oklahoma in the process, playing each other as in-state foes, obviously going back to their time in the Big 12. I don't know. I guess that this matchup is just all that more intriguing.
Oh, yeah, no, most definitely. I think for that reason right there that you mentioned, the fact that it's not Oklahoma, I think it's kind of like what we saw with the Cavs and Warriors for so long. And granted, that those games had obviously LeBron and Steph going up against each other, so that's going to draw in the audience regardless. But, you get kind of sick of seeing the same teams win year after year, despite, that's impressive what those teams were doing for so long, getting back to the championship round every single year. So it's the same thing applying for Oklahoma here. It's just, it is nice to see two fresh faces in there. And in the case of Texas, they got to this point last year, lost to Oklahoma, and are back again this year with a chance to win a championship in Game 3.
Also, how needed is it for Oklahoma City to be hosting two respective championship series at the same time?
Oh, it's got to be insanely busy there right now. I can't even imagine just how crazy it probably is in Oklahoma City right now. Just the vibes must be through the roof right now.
I need to look this up. I want to see what the proximity of, what's the name of is it the Prudential Center that the Thunder play at?
It is the Paycom Center, I believe.
Paycom Center? Am I thinking Prudential Center?
That's in New Jersey.
Okay, yeah, I don't. They showed that last night for some reason. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. But I'm interested to see what the proximity between those two venues is, because if you spread things out a little bit, then you'll have to worry. But there's some places like in Atlanta, like State Farm Arena, Mercedes-Benz Stadium are right next to each other, and that would obviously cause a lot of issues if you're having two events going on at the same time.
Oh yeah. Now I don't know where the softball stadium is necessarily in OKC. I'm assuming it's a little bit outside the city because Paycom Center is right outside the city.
Yeah.
So, or right. I'm sorry, in the city.
Yeah, I'll have the answer for you in just a second here.
Yeah. So it's I mean, look, so it's spread out enough to where it's
Yeah.
like, okay, like you could probably, yeah.
And again, like the Women's College World Series is always in Oklahoma City, so that's something they're always prepared for. But then you add in like, oh, hey, guess what? The NBA Finals are going to be there at the same time too. That is definitely something unique.
Oh yeah, no, it's totally unique, and it's probably it's great for the city, obviously, just to have all that influx of people coming in.
They are 7 miles apart, so that's a lot of crossover there. It looks like they're both kind of, I wouldn't call it downtown. Let's see, back out here. Yeah, I mean they're pretty darn close. That's right. That's right there, pretty close to downtown. So yeah, that must be a traffic situation for sure. I can't imagine what hotels must cost right now in Oklahoma City.
A lot. I mean, if Carolina had advanced to OKC, I would have had to go. And
Yeah, that's true.
That would have been. I'm sure that would have been quite the expensive, not just plane ticket, but also hotel.
Does GC comp you for that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
The plan was to go.
Okay.
If they made it, but. We don't have to worry about that. Save a lot of money, and
So hypothetically, if they went to the World Series and you were there this week, would you have tried to go to the finals too?
oh, easily,
Yeah.
easily. I would have found a way to get over there.
Yeah,
Like,
fair point. Again, exciting things happening, and Game 3 coming up tonight. Winner take all.
Yeah.
Again, whoever comes out on top is your champion, and I think that might also be a baked-in element of this because, like, Texas is good at everything, right? Mm-hmm. Texas has a ton of money. They're always going to be towards the top of most sports. I think a lot of people are rooting for Texas Tech to take them down, right?
I think so, but it's also a good story to see, Texas jaws a defeat last year, losing to Oklahoma. They're back again this year, have a chance to win. I think either way, it's going. I think it's just. I just want an entertaining final game of this series. I think that's. Softball is such a good sport to watch, and I'm glad to see it's getting the recognition and viewership that it definitely does deserve. Because if you haven't watched, I don't know what you're doing, quite honestly. And we'll see if Game 3 can cap off what's been a really fun season of college softball.
Yeah. So again, Game 3 coming up tonight. Winner take all, and see if we're going to be crowning a new Women's College World Series champion out there in Oklahoma City. Well, we've been waiting for it. It finally happened. The Pittsburgh Steelers have a new quarterback. We'll look at all the angles of this coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you on your Friday here on The Game. Tyler Head here for our friends over at Twin Peaks. I tell you about them all the time, but I'll remind you once again, there is never a bad time to be at Twin Peaks, but today is an especially special day because today is when Miss Twin Peaks will be in store signing our autographs from 5 until 7 p.m. You can meet your Miss Twin Peaks in person before the girls take the stage. Visit the Lodge tonight between 5 and 7 p.m. for the Miss Twin Peaks poster signing event going on today. And don't forget to cast your vote for Miss Popular. Head over to 2025 MissTwinPeaks.com to make your vote count. Also this weekend, the Neon Bikini Costume Party going on all weekend long, leading you up to watching the Miss Twin Peaks pageant live stream coming up on June the 10th. All this and so much more with our friends at Twin Peaks right down the street here in the Vista.
That is just, to me, is a joke. What are you going to bring him in for 1 year? Are you kidding me? I mean,
that's not the Steelers' way, right?
No, man, that guy needs to stay in California and go somewhere and chew on bark and whisper to the gods out there.
Welcome back in. Extra Point, Tyler Head, Jack Belcher with you here on your Friday on the Game. Yes, it finally happened. Aaron Rodgers has finally made his decision, and he will, in fact, be a Pittsburgh Steeler. That was Pittsburgh legend Terry Bradshaw a couple weeks ago giving his thought on the long saga while waiting for Aaron Rodgers to make up his mind. But, again, he's going to the Steelers this upcoming season. And, you know, you hear Bradshaw say something like that, and the radio host that he was on with, you know, said, that's not the Steelers' way. And it's very much not. Like, the Steelers are such a storied organization. Obviously, the Super Bowl, you know, trophies speak for themselves. The reputation they have around the league. Again, they've only had 3 head coaches in like the past 50 years with Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and now Mike Tomlin. Like, they are a standard in the NFL that most other organizations aspire to be. So the fact that they've been kind of bending the knee a little bit and waiting for Aaron Rodgers to make up his mind does feel very anti-Steelers.
It feels like, again, we talk about players having so much power and stuff. This feels like a situation where Aaron Rodgers holds all the power for whatever reason when we're talking about a 41-year-old quarterback that is about a season now removed from a Achilles injury that put him out 2 years ago with the Jets. And, you know, it's I just think it's kind of low for the Steelers to be stooping this far to kind of just wait for a decision from this guy when, keep in mind, you have Mason Rudolph, who I know is not setting the world on fire at any point throughout his career, but he's a decent option to have as a QB1 potentially going into this season, or maybe you should have drafted. I mean, I know you drafted Will Howard, but like maybe you should have picked someone a little higher.
He's out of, you know, again, Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, what you have in your quarterback room, he's definitely better than those guys, right? Like, there's no question about that. I would rather have Aaron Rodgers than either one of those guys quarterbacking my team. I just don't know where the ceiling is. Because, again, Aaron Rodgers is legitimately, for his entire career, one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play in the NFL. First ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt about that. Super Bowl champion, multiple MVPs, and all those kind of things. He's not that guy right now, though. And again, he played better towards the back half of last season, but he looks like a quarterback that is 41 years old with one Achilles. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not to say that he can't go out there and be good, but I think the expectation of him being old Aaron Rodgers again, it's not going to happen.
No, but also at the same time, what are the expectations for the Steelers? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, they play in a very loaded AFC North. I feel like they honestly have not gotten that much better over the offseason here. I mean, is it this move? I don't think it's going to push them over the top to be a contender, right?
It's one of those things where, like, okay, if he's suddenly went to, like, Cleveland, right? And we say, okay, I think Aaron Rodgers could potentially make Cleveland a playoff team. That's great for Cleveland because they're not a team that really makes the playoffs all that often, and they're in a mess of a situation. The Steelers' standard is so much higher than that, though. It's not enough to just make the playoffs. You're expected to make deep runs. You're expected to be a Super Bowl contender year in, year out. And during the Ben Roethlisberger era, that's what they were. Multiple Super Bowl appearances. Obviously, won the Super Bowl, as well a couple times. And we're always in that mix around or in the AFC Championship game. And since Big Ben is retired, it's not been the case. And again, it's not enough to just make the playoffs and get bounced in the wild card round. You got to make deep runs to kind of adhere to that Steelers standard. And again, I think they could make the playoffs as, 9-8 wild card team. But what does that really do for Pittsburgh? I don't know.
It's another winning season for Mike Tomlin, who typically he never, does not have losing seasons out there in Pittsburgh ever since he took over as head coach all those years ago. I don't know. The whole waiting out process of this, though, is just kind of ridiculous when you think about it. Like, the Steelers really held out for this. It's one thing if you're holding out for, 35-year-old Aaron Rodgers coming off an MVP season and, he is in the midst of a really great run where he could still win another MVP down the road. But that's not what we have right now. You have a guy that is in the twilight of his career. This is potentially it for Aaron Rodgers, if we're being honest. And, how and also, is he going to be durable for the whole season? Like, how do we know he's going to be able to make it the entire year with injuries and whatnot, and also just the drama that he can potentially bring?
Yeah, and that's the thing is the durability, right? Is okay, because again, famously for the Jets, he made it all of 4 plays in that first season before he got injured, and again, he's a guy that obviously is not as mobile as he once was. So, how many times can he get hit? How many hits can he take? And I'm trying to think. Last year, I mean, Russell Wilson got sacked a lot as the Steelers quarterback last year. Not as bad as the season in Denver before that, but he took a fair amount of hits. And every time, it's one of those things that when you have somebody that's been more injury prone as of late, every time they get hit, you're kind of like, oh, is that it? Like, is he getting back up? Are we going to keep going from here? And again, if you lose him, your options are Mason Rudolph, Will Howard. I think they got one more quarterback on the roster, but nobody that's going to be better than that, right?
No.
So all your eggs in being successful are kind of in the basket of Aaron Rodgers being good and healthy. And again, how reliable is that? We'll have to see.
But this is a guy that took 40 sacks last year. I'm just honestly surprised that he wants to come back and play another year. I mean, I guess maybe he didn't want to go out the way he did last year, but it's not, again, the stats would say he didn't have like an awful year.
Sure.
But it's like,
when you watched it, though, it was like, okay, this is a shell of what Aaron Rodgers was. And again, I'm going to be the first person to tell you that I think when he retires, he's going to be first ballot Hall of Famer, as he should be. He's legitimately one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game, but he's not who he once was.
No.
And I agree with you. I think there's a sense of, man, this Jets thing went horribly, horribly wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And look, it doesn't tarnish his legacy, right? When 20 years from now, we think of Aaron Rodgers, we're going to be thinking of the Packers, Super Bowl win, all the MVPs, the crazy Hail Marys, and all those kind of things. So he's not tarnishing his legacy, but I can understand wanting to go out on a positive note. If last year when he came back from the Achilles injury, if he led the Jets to the playoffs, and they won a game or two and made a deep run, quote unquote, and he wanted to retire after that, I think he could probably feel pretty good about that. But I think, and again, Rodgers, big ego guy, I don't think he can walk away from the game feeling like he was a disappointment at the end.
Yeah. I mean, his ego is far too big. And, I'm looking on the ESPN TV screen here. It says that, according to Adam Schefter, the Steelers never wavered their belief that Rodgers would eventually sign with them. So, I mean, look, and if that's the guy they want, if that is who they think is going to be a game changer for them, more power to them. But I don't know. I don't know. The Steelers have some good weapons. I think this could be a competitive offense. I don't know what to expect from Aaron Rodgers at this point in his career.
And I'm going to be interested to see as well. And like you said, the Steelers maybe never wavered in that belief, but it's still very un-Steelers-like to have a quarterback or any player like this play these kind of games out in the public as much. Usually these things kind of stay buttoned up when it comes to the Steelers organization, and that's something I'm going to be interested to see as well. Again, Rodgers, he goes on the McAfee show. He's talking here, there, and everywhere, even during the season, and he stirs up his fair share of controversy along the way, whether you're on his side or the other side, wherever it may be. The Steelers have a kind of a history of keeping these guys a little bit quieter, right? I don't feel like we knew how nuts Antonio Brown was until he left the Steelers, right? Now that George Pickens is gone, because again, he was already kind of flirting with that a little bit of being a little bit of a loony guy, known publicly.
He's kind of a nut.
Now that he's gone from the Steelers, I wonder if that's going to be turned up to 11. Because again, the organization, Mike Tomlin, do a really good job of keeping these guys, contained a little bit. So do we see a more contained Aaron Rodgers now that he's with this organization? I don't know.
Is that even possible?
I don't know.
I don't think it is. And not to mention, DK Metcalf's a little bit of a weird dude as well.
He's a little out there.
Have you heard the? I think it's been like this for a little bit now. His little diet where he eats like a bag of candy.
Yes, I did
every day.
It's like he doesn't eat anything until like the afternoon. Then it's a bag of candy and then like dinner, and that's it.
What is?
But he looks like he's never, eaten an ounce of sugar in his life.
What is up with Steelers receivers? Now, like AB was once upon a time a normal guy.
I think the Vontaze Burfict hit actually scrambled his brain, and we're seeing the residuals of that.
All the homies hate Vontaze Burfict for that.
And again, Vontaze Burfict hurt a lot of people in his career. But yeah, like again, Pickens, again, we knew he was kind of nutty at Georgia, and we've seen that with the Steelers. But now that he's going somewhere else, I'm just interested to see how wide open he's going to be.
He ended up where? Dallas?
Yes.
Oh boy. Oh boy. That might be where everything kind of falls over that. But you know what? I think Rodgers, to circle back, I think he's going to be able to prove some people wrong. I think he's going to go out probably on a high note this year. We'll see. But again, this move makes them better, but does it make them a championship contender? Nah, I don't think so.
Shout out to our guy John Livestream, who I think is the world's biggest Aaron Rodgers fan, because he's not enjoyed anything that we've just said in the past 10 minutes, essentially. And look, if you're an Aaron Rodgers guy, that's perfectly fine. I don't have anything against him. I'm just going off of what I've seen on the field these past couple years and where I think his ceiling can be. And look, John, if he goes on to lead the Steelers to the AFC Championship game and wins league MVP, I will happily tell you I was wrong. I just don't think that's in the cards this year.
I don't think it is either. But hey, who knows? And I love how the Jets are week 1 on the schedule, and then I wish it was at Lambeau, but Packers on Sunday Night Football in October.
Oh yeah, that is gonna. You think they're going to bring that up a few times during the game? Oh, man, Aaron Rodgers, all the history that he has here and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Like, the NFL knew what they were doing, crafting the schedule, anticipating him going there. And, yeah, there's going to be some must-see TV with that.
Yeah, it's going to be a must-see season for Aaron Rodgers. But we'll see how he does. 41 years old, Big Ben was there far beyond his stay.
Yeah,
so.
Big Ben fell off pretty hard there at the end.
So it can't get worse than that.
We'll see. We'll come back, wrap up the hour. I have a movie question for Jack as we wrap up the hour number 1, the Extra Point, up next here on your Friday on the Game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head, Jack Beltry with you on your Friday here on the game. Wrapping up hour number 1, and if you haven't listened to the past couple weeks, you may not know Jack is our resident film expert here on the game. If you follow him on Twitter, you can get thorough film breakdowns of just about every movie that he sees. You saw Lilo and Stitch the other day, correct?
I think I went to go see 3 movies last week. So I saw Friendship with Paul Rudd and Tim Robinson.
All right.
Very funny movie.
Cool.
Did enjoy it. Did see Lilo and Stitch. Was very underwhelming. I love the original.
Sounds about right.
Then I saw the Karate Kid movie, Karate Kid Legends, which was surprisingly very good.
Very cool. I wanted to run this by you because the F1 movie comes out later on this month. Again, I'm a big racing guy. I will check it out at some point. But I always get worried when I see a racing movie because I feel like that's one genre of sports type action that they get wrong a lot when it comes to the actual sequences of racing and driving and all those kind of things. Nothing bothers me more. You see this in movies like Talladega Nights, which I get as a comedy movie, Days of Thunder, those kind of things. Whenever like somebody needs to make a pass, they just shift, right? They just grab a different gear and they go around the guy with the implication that you're not racing in the highest gear, which is ridiculous. On road courses, you do shift a lot, but like, I can't get around this guy. Let me just shift and go around. Like, it doesn't work like that. And that's something that forever bothers me when it comes to racing movies, that I feel like Brad Pitt's going to do at some point in this F1 movie, and it's really going to bother me.
Oh, we're going to see that happen probably. Did you see the I don't think I ever got around to seeing it. Did you see the racing movie that came out last year or 2 years ago with David Harbour and Orlando Bloom? I think it was also like an F1.
I don't think so. The last F1 movie I watched was Rush.
Okay, I don't know if it was like F1, but
which is a really good movie if you want to check that out.
I do need to see that.
But that's something that like always bothers me.
Oh, totally.
And also when they get like specifics wrong, like so Ford versus Ferrari is supposed to be taking place during the 24 hours of Daytona, Rolex 24, but they're shooting it at California Speedway, which I know is not Daytona.
Yeah.
So that always bothers me when I watch that movie. Is there something for you, for a certain genre of movie or whatever, that bothers you when movies get it wrong or don't do it realistically?
I think just, actually, I'll recent example here, recency bias. The Lilo and Stitch movie really bugged me because, all right, so when you have all these, like, we're in that genre or that era now where you're going to get remakes, right?
Sure.
We see that a lot with Disney and their live actions and whatnot.
Yeah.
And you look at what you have come before, animation. I know some things in animation you can't do necessarily in live action, so that's fine. But to change basically so many big, important details, to leave certain characters out and kind of just change the overall theme of the story, that's what really bugs me. So, like, basically, in short, when you have something that came before that was very, very good and beloved, and you go ahead and change it just to make some profit, make some money, which this movie is going to make $1 billion and be the first one to do it this year eventually, it just really bugs me because it's like, it's not hard. This movie could have easily been a 1-to-1 replica of the animation, and I'd be happy with it.
Yeah, and that's what I've seen in the build-up to it. Like, there's certain characters that are not in there, or characters that have been changed from how they were in the cartoons. It's like, that's not why people like that character, or when it's interested in that character. Why are you changing it with this live-action movie?
Like, Caroline and I had this whole discussion about it, because we went to go see it last week, and it's just like, we both love the animated movie. I mean, it came out only like 20 years ago,
Sure,
so it's like, it's just... I don't know, man. It's insane. But some people like it. Some people don't. So that's probably what bugs me. And there's a lot of examples. Like Snow White was also like that this year. There's a lot of movies besides just Disney that are definitely like that as well.
Yeah. Well, I figured you would have an answer for this, given your affinity for film.
But the F1 movie, I'm looking forward to going out and seeing that.
It should be fun. And
you're gonna need your review.
I'll give a review on that one. We'll have to see that, and I'll give my review. Hang out for a little bit, and I'll see you in about 2 hours.
Yeah, see you then.
Coming up next, hour number 2 of the Extra Point, we'll run the numbers like our Corey Parson of the BetMGM Network here on the game. 10 o'clock, hour number 2. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Friday on the game. Checking the clock. It's 10 o'clock, and that means it is time to run the numbers with our guy Corey Parson of the BetMGM Network. Joining me as always on the Love Chevrolet phone lines. Obviously, we'll get to some numbers and stuff for football coming up here in a minute, but is there any kind of bet, Corey, that I can make on Tyrese Halliburton making more clutch last-second shots as the NBA Finals go on?
I mean, if you could, it would really be coming at a pretty good number for the sports book, because it just seems like he was really just keeps getting it done right now. So Tyrese Halliburton just having a phenomenal playoff run. So good for him, good for the Indiana Pacers. Still going to be an exciting series. But that number is still sitting out there pretty lopsided towards the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, some of the people I've talked to in Vegas have told me the public is jumping all over that number with the Pacers, but you got the Sharks out there still laying a big number. The public is getting behind the Pacers, taking those plus odds. Now at plus 275, despite them having a 1-0 lead in the series. So very interested to see that the sharp money, the big spenders are still piling in on the Oklahoma City Thunder. And that number for game 2 is 11.5. So they really think that the Thunder are going to bounce back in a big way in game 2.
And I can see, kind of the knee-jerk reaction for a lot of people seeing how crazy last night's game was, and the Pacers pulling that magic out once again like they've done so many times in this playoff. But if they were to win game number 2, I imagine you're talking about it being flooded with people jumping on the Pacers at that point, right?
Yeah, well, definitely at that point, that number will probably move to about 110, 110. If may probably even see the Pacers as the favorite at that point. And then NBA series really is game to game. So we've seen the Pacers be able to do this, but we know how good Oklahoma is, how they have this season where they've blown teams out. But what I really think about this series is you have two teams that have a lot of depth. They're well-built teams. Now, obviously, you have stars like Halliburton and SGA, but these teams are really just put together very well. Rick Carlisle, one of the best coaches in the NBA. And Tyler, I would say that Sam Presti, general manager of the Oklahoma City Thunder, is probably the best executive in all of professional sports. And he's not doing it in Boston, L.A., New York. He's doing it in Oklahoma City, which might be the smallest market in all of professional sports.
And I don't know if this has any kind of effect. We were talking a little bit earlier about, the gap between games, which persist through the entire NBA playoffs, which makes it drag out for as long as it is. But you also have 3 days between last night and playing game number 2 coming up on Sunday. And, if you were to ask me, hey, if they were playing a back-to-back and game number 2 is coming up tonight, I would absolutely be all over the Pacers because I think they'd be riding the wave of momentum coming off of last night's game. But you kind of get 3 days to reset. Does that affect how people look at these games, given the fact that there's such big gaps between them when these two teams play each other?
Not necessarily, not really, because you kind of know that going into it. So these are professional athletes. They know what they're getting into, so you really don't see too much market reaction to that. Obviously, this is done for television purposes.
Sure.
The NBA wants to stretch out, as long as they possibly can, so they can continue to sell ads and sell spots and help their network partners out. But it's definitely something that is probably already built in going into the postseason.
Again, running the numbers with our guy Corey Parson of the BetMGM Network. Let's turn our attention over to football now, and we've gone through some of the Week 1 lines here in these past couple weeks, but as we get closer to the start of the season, under 100 days, we're starting to get some lines a little bit deeper on into the season, including some pretty key marquee matchups going on around the SEC. And we'll start locally here in South Carolina as they play host to Alabama on October 25th. Homecoming game against the Crimson Tide, which that is a bold choice, but I guess it shouldn't come as a surprise that Alabama's going to get the benefit of the doubt, especially with what South Carolina lost this offseason to the draft and out of eligibility. Alabama is 7.5-point favorite as of right now.
Yeah, as of right now, they are laying the hook on the road, which really shows that, the sports books kind of believe in Alabama more than the public does. Now, listen, we're months away from that game right now between South Carolina and Alabama. But right now, 100% of the money is on Carolina to cover that number. So there's nobody's even going to the window right now to get behind Alabama laying that 7.5. Now, obviously, we're very early, but 86% of the tickets and 100% of the money. And that's that hook right there because they figure Carolina will be at least within a touchdown. The public is not in on Alabama so far this year. They bet their win total up, but the odds makers don't like Bama, and the sharp money, because that's all who's betting right now, is kind of reacting to that. So by the time this game does kick off, I think you would probably see this game be a 7-point spread, or maybe even Alabama laying 6.5 instead of 7.5, which it is right now.
Well, and it's important to remember as well, when you place a bet on something like this, you're locked into whatever that bet is when you place it. So if you're going to get in South Carolina to cover the 7.5, and let's say South Carolina gets off to a phenomenal start and Alabama doesn't, and that line comes down to 1 or something like that, you're still being able to win based off the 7.5 that you bet, correct?
Yeah, now this is very sharp. Now the people that are betting this right now are really the pros out there in Vegas and in New Jersey and some other spots across the country. The average casual fan is not going to get in on this. But that's why you see such a lopsided number, is because that hook at home, you mentioned the fact that it was going to be homecoming. Nobody's really going to sit on a single game bet between South Carolina and Alabama for what that would be now. This is for 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really the people that bet professionally trying to get the best of the number.
Looking at some other games around the SEC here, we go to Saturday, September 13th. Georgia going on the road to Rocky Top to take on Tennessee, and this has been one of the more highly anticipated matchups the past couple of years. Obviously, last year when Tennessee came into Athens, it was huge, and Georgia won that one. But I think everybody's perception of Tennessee has shifted drastically since the fallout of the Nico Iamaleava stuff. And, that's a team that did lose a lot of talent themselves to the draft, and Georgia now sitting as the 5.5-point favorite. And I imagine there's a chance that number could tick up quite a bit before that game gets here.
Interesting to open up at 5.5, and obviously all the money right now is pouring in on Georgia. 95% of the bets, 97% of the tickets back in the Bulldogs right now. But what's interesting is that home 5.5. That's always a very dangerous spot right there when you go on the road as a 5.5-point favorite. That opening line kind of says that, okay, this could possibly be an upset spot.
Yeah.
So let's see where this number goes. If this number continues to hover around 5.5, if this number continues to hover around 5.5, 6, that's probably the line maker telling you this could be a spot where Georgia can get knocked off. So that's what their power rankings and their numbers are saying. Once again, obviously, long time away from this game, but this is a short number for this series.
Stick with Georgia as they play host to Alabama on Saturday, September the 27th. Of course, this was the game last year that Bama got out to the 28-0 lead. Georgia comes storming back, takes the lead for a second, and then Jalen Milroe finds Ryan Williams for that long touchdown, and Alabama pulls off the big win before getting upset the next week against Vanderbilt. And you're looking at Georgia as a 4-point favorite right now at home. I mean, that kind of tells me if this game was on a neutral site, it'd probably be right at a pick'em or something along those lines. So Georgia getting the slight edge, I imagine, because they're at home for this game, right?
Yeah, so that would definitely be. Now, really, you see it more so in college than you're doing in the pros because of the atmosphere. In professional football, the home field advantage really means nothing. So you don't really see those points built in. But in a rivalry like this between these two teams, you're 100% Tyler. They're telling you that he's basically an even matchup right here. Right now, the public is coming in. They're back in Alabama because these are games that Alabama wins versus Georgia. But you got a little bit of sharp money ticking up and hitting the Georgia side. So right now, people that are betting this game, the bigger bettors, the guys making the bigger wagers, which would generally indicate that they are the sharper side, like Georgia minus the 4. The sharps are not really on Alabama this year. The sharps don't like their win total, and the sharps do not like them on a week-to-week basis, is really what the early lines are telling us. But it's pros versus Joes because the public is all over Alabama. In the win totals and in the game-to-game scenarios.
And talking to Corey Parson of the BetMGM Network, who's run the numbers each and every Friday. Texas, one of the favorites to win everything this year, SEC Championship, national championship. Arch Manning is a Heisman Trophy winner, all those kind of things. But they do kind of have a sneaky trip to Gainesville, Florida on that same day, Saturday, September the 27th, sitting as a 7.5-point favorite. Look, Florida last year, saved Billy Napier's job with their late season surge, beating teams like Ole Miss and LSU. And look, when you have a quarterback as talented as DJ Lagway, you're always going to have a chance. That is one of those games that could be a little bit of a sleepy gotcha for Texas if they're not careful.
Yeah, definitely, and that's what the numbers are saying right now. Once again, how we talked about South Carolina and Alabama, a home team getting the touchdown and a hook. Same situation you have with the Gators on this Saturday. They're getting a touchdown and the hook, and the market reacted just the same. Everybody is all over Florida in this spot right here. Now, Florida is a team that the public and the Sharks like this year. You see Florida getting bet heavily in a lot of their early lines. People are going towards the Gators. They like Lagway. They like the way they finished the season last year. Now, as far as Texas goes, it's not necessarily that Texas is going to go down there and lose. Like you mentioned, Texas is a team that's looking like a team that's going to be contending for a national championship this year. Obviously, legacy name at quarterback. But that 7.5 seems like it's a little bit too much right now. This game will probably close at 7, maybe even 6.5. If it closes at 7, I would take the Gators. If it closes at 6.5, no, let me say that differently. If it closes at 7, because you want to get the number, right? This is a numbers game, as this segment is called, right? You want to get the number, and you want to try to outsmart the bookmakers. If the bookmaker drops this number to 6.5, everybody's going to be all over Texas. If the bookmakers leave it at 7, then you'll still see people play Florida for the push, but really, if you like Florida, you want 7.5. If you like Texas, you want 7 or 6.5. But 6.5 will be, the market will swell and jump all over Texas.
About 2 more minutes here with Corey Parson of the BetMGM Network. We'll take a look at one more game. Speaking of the Florida Gators, they go to Death Valley on September 13th, taking on LSU, a team that they were able to beat a season ago, as I mentioned, at the very end of the year. LSU, as always, going to be a favorite at home, 7.5-point favorite over the Gators.
Yep, that's at 7.5 again. This time that 7.5 is at home. The public, all the Sharks do not like LSU this season. It's going to be interesting. I think Brian Kelly has a lot to play for. He's going to have a good year. Now, this game, to my knowledge, has this game been scheduled yet?
I believe that might be a night game. Let me double check on that. Let me see.
If this game is a night game right here, that makes this 7.5 really stand up. Now, despite that, once again, Tyler, the public and the Sharks all over the Gators.
By the way, yes, 7:30 kick on ABC that night.
Yeah, so that's going to be a night game in the swamp. This number drops to 7. I'm on LSU. Everybody else, though, is all over Florida. Florida is really the team that really sticks out when you look at betting college football this year. The public and the Sharks really like this team a lot. You can either make a lot of money or lose a lot of money betting the Gators this year.
Well, it's going to be a fun season when it gets here. We're inching ever closer, and we'll have some more fun stuff to talk about next week. Appreciate it as always, Corey.
Hey, good stuff, Tyler. I'll holler at you, my man.
Again, it's Corey Parson of the BetMGM Network as we run the numbers each and every Friday. Yesterday afternoon, Dimitri Urvanos and myself spoke to Alice Kirchner of the Split Zone Duo podcast about a lot of things going on around college football, as well as his thoughts on the Gamecocks in 2025. I'll replay that conversation for you coming up next. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Friday here on The Game.
name is Dimitri Ravanas. I'm filling in for Terry today. Tyler Head alongside me. Coming up on August 23rd in Raleigh is the second annual Sports Podcast Festival. It will feature Split Zone Duo. Good little day trip, only about 3 hours from Columbia. Why not come up and see our next guest, Alex Kirshner, part of Split Zone Duo. Alex, how you doing, buddy?
Dimitri, great to be with you. Great to be with the good people of Columbia.
We were talking about this before we brought you on. The team that most needs the offseason to be over and actually kick things off. And Tyler and I sort of came to the conclusion that everybody is playing for second behind North Carolina.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. I think North Carolina, probably more than any football program outside of those having like a big scandal going on in the last 10 years, just needs toe to meat leather. No question about it. They need to give us something to talk about that is not who is in Bill Belichick's bed and about her real estate holdings and what emails she's copied on.
Alex, appreciate you taking your time. Big fan of the show. And I think at the same time, though, isn't there also kind of a fear of what it's going to look like when they finally do get on the field? Because, again, we talk about Bill Belichick from what he accomplished in the NFL, which, again, nobody's more decorated than him, but this is a much different game. This is a different type of athlete that you're dealing with, and there's no guarantee that he's going to come in and be able to have success right away.
No, I mean, he's taken over a 6-7 team. Granted, ton of roster turnover, as there is anytime there's a new coach anywhere now. But, you know, it's a 500 team that has basically never been able to play defense in the last 10 years and is going to have to do significant work on that side of the ball. And that is going to rely, I mean, probably reading the tea leaves, on a quarterback from South Alabama, Gio Lopez, to come up to the ACC and be good quickly. You know, that could happen, might not. But I think either way, it's an entirely new ballgame for a guy who is used to working with the literal best quarterback of all time. And we saw what happened his last 3 or 4 years in New England when he didn't have that, and when he was dealing with a guy like Mac Jones, who, you know, could follow instructions but wasn't very talented. Now you take, you know, another several steps down from that, and you're just talking about run-of-the-mill ACC quarterbacks, and yeah, it's going to be a new ballgame. It's a new teaching style for a guy who's used to teaching much more accomplished, much smarter quarterbacks.
We are talking to Alex Kirshner from Split Zone Duo. The show will be live up in Raleigh for the Sports Podcast Festival on August 23rd. You can get tickets at etix.com. Alex, we were talking about the vibes locally here around the Gamecocks, and they are very high. And they are very high in part because you have a superstar on both sides of the ball. From the national perspective, what is the vibe on South Carolina this offseason?
I think very good, because you're exactly right. They do have complete superstars on both sides. I was in Boone, North Carolina a couple months ago, sitting in the office with Dow Loggins, who's now the head coach at Appalachian State, but last couple of years, was the offensive coordinator at South Carolina. And when the mics were off, actually, one of the things that he was talking about, though I don't think it was off the record or anything, was that South Carolina was a really tough place to leave. I think they enjoyed their time, the family did, in Columbia, but because you have a quarterback like Lenora Sellers, who just had a complete breakthrough season where really none of us in the national media thought much of him before the year, but by the end of the year, I think we all agree that he's a guy who could make a trip to New York next December, and I think he's in that caliber of player, and that's really shown some proof of concept and the ability to elevate an offense. And I know that not everybody from that offense last year is going to be back, but, you know, like a couple of years ago, we wondered what was going to happen when Xavier Legette went to the NFL, and it turned out that they were able to find new weapons in the passing game and backfill them. And I think their recruiting operation's been pretty good. So I believe in the South Carolina offense. And Dylan Stewart is just kind of a freak. Enjoy him for the next 2 years before he's sacking NFL quarterbacks.
What about the vibe nationally on Shane Beamer? I think he's gotten better each year he has been here. Seems to, obviously he got raised in a coaching household, so he knows what comes with the job. But it seems like he has very much become more comfortable each year being himself in this leadership role. I don't know, though, if we consider him amongst the elite in the sport right now.
Yeah, I don't think that most people consider him to be among the elite in the sport, but at this point, having seen him do this job for 4 years, it's hard to argue that he hasn't been a successful hire for South Carolina. I think he does a couple of things well. I think he has hired good coordinators, and I think that he's recruited for this program in the way that you have to recruit if you want to be any good at South Carolina, because you are never going to be in the blue blood weight class with the Alabamas and Georgias where you're, taking your pick of a handful of high 4-star and 5-star guys every year. And you really can't, rely 100% on quote unquote winning your backyard, because there's a lot of teams that are interested in recruiting South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina. So I think what Beamer has done is really smart. He's used the transfer portal effectively, not just not just being the highest bidder, but finding players who he thinks will have a game that will translate, whether, intra-SEC like Rocket Sanders or a guy like Kyle Kennard last year from Georgia Tech, who he looked at, had good numbers at Georgia Tech and thought, yeah, this guy will be able to play against SEC tackles. And I think he's also leaned on old family ties. Shane Beamer is very active in the Washington, D.C. area, where Frank spent a lot of years getting players to come and play for him at Virginia Tech, where his dad did. So I think it's wise the way that he has been willing to turn over different stones, both in the portal and in high school recruiting, and get guys who are good fits and gettable, frankly, for South Carolina. Guys that he doesn't necessarily always have to beat every program in the country to get, and then can develop.
Let's look at the coaches underneath Coach Beamer. You have Mike Sheila taking over play calling duties and obviously having one of the better quarterbacks in college football in Lenore Sellers, and then Clayton White on the defensive side, having to retool what was one of the best defenses this program's seen in recent memory, sending a ton of guys to the NFL. Which one of those guys is under the most pressure to perform this upcoming season?
Well, I think ultimately it's going to be Shula in the offense, just because you're not going to have a quarterback like Lenora Sellers very often. And I think, people are also going to look around South Carolina. I just mentioned the recruiting that Beamer has done in the DMV. I think this is year 3 for Nick Harbor, if I'm not losing track.
Correct.
One of the most sought after athletic wide out tight end flex type recruits the college football scene in a long time. I think there's a desire to see, not just from South Carolina fans, I'm sure, but from fans of college football, to see, can somebody unlock this guy, right? This is a serious weapon, and what can he become? I'm interested in the backfield. I know Rocket Sanders was just a 1-year guy. They have, a really interesting eligibility situation right now with Rasul Faison, who's a really good runner from Utah State, who I'm not sure is going to be able to play this year. I'm not sure South Carolina's sure of that either. It's about his eligibility. But there's pieces here on the offense that, you really feel like you were wasting if you couldn't have a good year.
He is Alex Kirshner. You can see him and his colleagues from Split Zone Duo as part of the Sports Podcast Festival, August 23rd in Raleigh, North Carolina. It is the place to spend week 0 if you are not going to one of the games. Alex, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Yeah, hope to see y'all in Raleigh. Go Cox.
That was our conversation with Alex Kirshner of the Split Zone Duo podcast yesterday on the Halftime Show. Coming up next, we'll tell you who sprung a leak and also talk to our guy Joe Machika, who's back after a little vacation. Coming up next, it is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Friday here on The Game.
That's a base hit down the line. Suarez has tied the game. Marte is home. They will wave Vargas. Here he comes. And the Diamondbacks have stolen the lead right back. Gino Suarez. Wow.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Friday here on the game. Got our guy Joe Machika back on as he does each and every Friday, and will through the summer and through the season coming up. And Joe, I'm really glad you're here at this time because it's time for Who Sprung a Leak, brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Detection. The Braves yesterday sprung a leak by giving up 6 runs in the top of the 9th inning to lose and get swept by the Diamondbacks in that 11-10 game yesterday. Joe, do you know the Braves and the White Sox are tied in a statistical category right now?
Yeah, I do. I'm not sure exactly which one. The game yesterday was bad. I was watching it. Unbelievable scenes there in Atlanta. So, yes, deserving of the Who Sprung a Leak, most certainly. But enlighten me, Tyler. What category are they tied in?
The Braves and the White Sox are tied for losing the second most one-run games in baseball this year with 16. The Red Sox are the only team above that with 17.
Yeah. Tyler, you know it's bad when you're tied with the White Sox in anything these days. So, Braves fans, I'm sorry that you've stooped down to the level of Jerry Reinsdorf and my White Sox. But, yeah, ugly game yesterday. And, yeah, Diamondbacks, man, 9th inning heroics.
Brutal stuff. And still like over half the season left. So I don't know how much better it's going to get, unfortunately. We're not even at the All-Star break. But besides that point, how you been, man?
I've been great, Tyler. Enjoying my sabbatical a little bit. Got some fun things, in the works. Was talking to you about before we came on. So excited to, kind of work my way into that this summer. But yeah, sabbatical's been great as the kind of sports media cycle slows down here.
I want to get into the college football playoff discussion here in just a second because you offer a perspective from the Notre Dame side that I don't think many people are thinking about. But I got to get to this first. The other day, Wes and I were talking. He's been out at Shane Beamer football camp these past couple of days, and I was kind of talking about, what the media folks talk about when they're out there and how everybody handles these kind of things. And he said that Joe was famous for, at these things, making proclamations of things that he could possibly do at these, like punting or throwing a football on top of the Steve Spurrier indoor football facility. Can you verify if this is true or not?
Yeah, Wes Mitchell throwing me under the bus. That it gets really, really hot down here in South Carolina. So I'm just gonna chalk that one up to this heat making me a little woozy or getting the confidence up a little bit too high. 'Cause those camps, man, it gets hot out there, and I think my eyes were playing tricks on me, thinking the ceiling was a little bit closer to the ground than it was. But yes, I can confirm I've made some proclamations like that. But I'll blame the heat, Tyler. I'm not used to it as a northerner.
So no attempts were made to do this.
No official attempts were made, simply because I didn't want to embarrass myself that much, but more of like an intern. Again, being an intern, just saying, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, definitely, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Wes has not forgotten about that.
I wouldn't blame him either. But I blame the heat, man. It's something else here.
Well, I'm and Wes notoriously hates people that complain about the heat as well. That's kind of one of his bugaboos.
I'm not doing myself any favors. I know. And then because every time I would complain about the heat, he would just point to the defensive line coaches that are in an all-black tracksuit, sweating it out, getting their figure ready.
I'd imagine today being 90s with no cloud cover. There's going to be some heat complainers out there today at camp.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And Wes Mitchell and Chris Clark will probably not be amongst them. Those guys are vets.
I think Chris might do it from time to time, but definitely not Wes.
Right. Yeah, Chris Clark every once in a while would just throw the occasional, man, it's a little hot out, or it's supposed to get a little hot out here. Yeah. Or if I was sweating through my shirt, man, like, you should go jump in a pool or something, one of those. But, those guys are doing the Lord's work out there.
Yeah, so I'm sure they're having fun. Hopefully they put on a lot of deodorant and brought a lot of water with them today. But getting back into the conversation about the college football playoff, and again, you've been away for a couple weeks. I don't know how much you've been zeroing in on what the discussions back and forth between 4-4, 2-2-1, 5-11, 16 teams, 14 teams. What's your mileage and how you've been assessing all these discussions and what the future of the playoff's going to be?
Yeah, Tyler, to be honest, I think I've been seeing the 4-4 and change essentially, which I'm here for. I think I don't know if there's 4 teams out of the Big Ten every year that deserve to make it. Now, and we can go as much as saying the SEC is, although the SEC hasn't really been a reason to say the SEC doesn't deserve 4 teams in it.
Sure.
These past couple of years, because there's been 4 teams that deserve to make the playoff at the SEC these past, I say, half decade or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't say can say the same thing about the Big Ten. Now, the 4-4 and change though still makes sense because I think for the rest of the country, there might be one team on the bubble. And I don't know. I've seen some things talking about a play-in game for the 12th seed, which would have been awesome last season because you would have had Ole Miss, Alabama.
Sure.
So I think maybe a 4-4 and change with a play-in for the 12th seed would be awesome. You were talking about from the Notre Dame perspective.
Yeah, so that's the angle of this that I think is kind of getting overlooked because we're talking about, okay, does the SEC and Big Ten get 4 teams in? Are we going with only conference champions and then at large? Is like nobody's talking about the Notre Dame angle of this, which I think is really, really interesting because, quite frankly, I feel like the powers that be at Notre Dame are just sitting back and laughing because they know no matter what the format, they're going to have an in no matter what, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Because, again, unless it's like you make it 3 conferences that have buy-in stake, I guess, and you limit it down to like 2 teams at the at-large bids, and then maybe Notre Dame doesn't have a good enough season to be in those top 2 teams, then essentially they're out.
Yeah.
But they were set up last season with the conference championship rule, and then the top 4 seeds, like they were set up for that home game and for the
Sure.
to open the college football playoff at home. So I think Notre Dame, Tyler, like you said, kind of sitting back, laughing, just enjoying the however these conferences play it all out, and just being like, we're probably going to get a home game regardless.
Well, and it benefits them this upcoming year that they're going to a straight seeding model, which, if we continued on with what we did last year, they would have never had the opportunity to get a first-round bye because they don't play in a conference. But now the fact it's going to be just the straight-up top 4 seeds getting byes based on the college football playoff rankings, if they're an undefeated or 11-1 team, they're likely to be one of those teams in one of those spots, which, again, wouldn't have existed last year.
Right, exactly, Tyler. And then look at the teams that didn't play that first round game. In the next round, they struggled from that week of rest. So I think seeing that too, and how well Notre Dame was able to play, and those teams who had that first round game was able to play. I think by giving Notre Dame the one or allowing them to be the one team that was never going to have to skip their first round game. I think teams were like, okay, we need to change this. Let the top 4 seeds get the extra week, and I think that's the best way to do it because nobody really wants to wait and delay your players hitting and all that stuff. So
Sure.
I don't know. I think it's interesting.
I think this reinforces why people hate Notre Dame so much because while the rest of the college football world seems like it's on fire again, they're just kind of off to the side saying, "All right, you guys figure that out. We'll be ready whenever you are."
Floating right above it, again, scheduling whoever they want, not necessarily joining a conference either. And they're going to do that until they absolutely have to. And somebody's like, okay, you can't join the college football playoff until you're in a conference.
But they would never do that because they're such a valuable brand.
Right, exactly. So they're always going to find a way to schedule whoever they want and be their own brand, and that's going to piss some people off, right? Because the rest of college football is conforming and fitting in. And Notre Dame seeming to be, I guess it looks as if they're ahead of the curve. I don't want to, again, because the Notre Dame wound for some people around here is pretty big.
And it seems to be getting to the point where teams like Southern Cal don't want to play Notre Dame anymore because they think that's going to affect their potential of getting in the college football playoff.
Yeah, Tyler, again, growing up in South Bend, that one gets me going a little bit. Southern Cal was my favorite rivalry to go to as a child.
Sure.
So it took me a little bit to relearn that USC is obviously in South Carolina, but we were school before they were state.
Right.
From my recollection. So but no, I don't get it. I think Lincoln, it's more of a Lincoln Riley kind of thing, and you saw how well that it did for Michigan when they stopped scheduling Notre Dame. They started to win some football games. So maybe they're thinking it's gonna play in the same way it did with Michigan, where the program starts going up once you stop playing Notre Dame and stop getting handed a loss. But I don't know.
It wouldn't be the first time Lincoln Riley ran away from something.
Right. Exactly. No, it would not be the first time at all. And Notre Dame's been giving USC the business these last couple of years, so it makes sense.
We'll come back and wrap up the hour. Joe's Hoosier Brethren are having a good time when it comes to following the Pacers right now. We'll talk about Game 1 last night coming up next. Extra Point Tyler had Joe Machika joining me as he will do each and every Friday going forward here on the game.
Pacers with a chance to win it. Final seconds, no fouls to give. Halliburton looking. Halliburton driving, pulls up, jump shot. It's good! It's good! With 0.3 of a second remaining. Timeout, OKC. Tyrese Halliburton does it again.
He definitely did it again. Welcome back in, Extra Point. Tyler Head, Joe Machika hanging out with me on this Friday here on the game. That was called last night as the Pacers shockingly take game one from the OKC Thunder. Trailed once again by 15 points at one point. Mount a crazy comeback. And it's one of those kind of things that when OKC missed that shot, the Pacers got the rebound, and then Halliburton got the ball. It didn't matter where he was going to take that shot from. It's like, oh, it's going to go in.
Yeah, no, you knew it was going in, Tyler. Tyrese Halliburton, incredible shot maker. And, first lead change all game comes with
0.3 seconds.
0.3 seconds to go. Incredible.
Yeah, no, wild thing. And, again, I think we all look at OKC as a much better, much more talented team than the Pacers. But them taking game number one in OKC, no less, makes you kind of raise your eyebrows like, wait a minute. What could happen here? Now, again, if OKC evens the series, then, maybe that momentum's kind of shifted back to the Thunder, but then you're going back to Indianapolis after that. And it's like, you never know what can happen. And again, when you have a team that's on a heater like this throughout the entire playoffs, you can just never count them out.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Red hot throughout the playoffs. In 49 states, it's just basketball. But in Indiana, I guess it just means more to put it in some language that the South will understand.
Yeah.
So it's huge. It's going to be a raucous environment out in Indiana. You've got Caitlin Clark pulling up to all the games. You've got Celebrity Row, all that. Although there aren't very many Pacers fans, as we were kind of talking about off air. Like I'm more of a Chicago guy. You don't really necessarily know too many Pacers fans. So. But I think that arena is still going to be loud nonetheless.
It is kind of funny that you talk about it that way, that, again, Indiana is such a basketball crazy state, and and again, it's the pros, and you're pulling guys from all over the place. So the standard of what the Pacers have done over the years, maybe not quite to the level that people would want it to be for the NBA team that represents that entire state. Yeah,
most definitely. And finally starting to fulfill some of the prophecy, I guess, or getting that team back to where once was with Reggie, and kind of competing back with the old glory, and as it should have been. When the Pacers were good back in the day, it was the NBA was thriving, and they were a challenging team, that kind of slept on team from the Midwest, and similar to today, that everyone is kind of rallying behind.
What do you think Pops Halliburton's reaction was last night? He wasn't in the venue interview because he's banned from the road games still, but I imagine he was losing his mind somewhere.
I'm sure he was losing his mind, Tyler. And that whole saga has been crazy. I'm assuming he's going to be at the games in Indiana. I don't think he can sit courtside.
No, they got him up in a box now to keep him as far away from the court as possible.
Probably a good thing. I love part of the NBA playoffs. My favorite part of the NBA playoffs is watching some of these fathers react in game. I know T. Morant is always a fun, dad to watch sit courtside and all that. So always fun to watch the dads getting into it, and rightfully so, man. That's their boys going out there and doing all that. So it's love to see the enthusiasm.
And I think if we were put in his shoes, I don't know if we'd react as aggressively as he did. Getting in Antetokounmpo's face is one thing, but the excitement of, I guess, seeing your kid accomplish those kind of things can take you over at some point, right?
Right, most definitely. Yeah, again, Tyler, I don't necessarily know if I want any smoke with Giannis Antetokounmpo.
He's lucky he's a nice guy, or else he might have gotten that smoke.
Right. Really, really nice guy, but I'm sure if you get in the Greek Freak's face, there's something will happen. I don't think you earned that nickname, for nothing. So scary man, Giannis.
I think it's also funny because that's a microcosm of how long the NBA playoffs take. That feels like it was 4 months ago, right?
It does. It feels like a couple months ago at the very least, Tyler, and was 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Just like 2 series ago, but still, like a month or something along those lines. That is my one issue with the NBA playoffs is they do take far too long, and I wish we could, because again, we're not getting game 2 until Sunday night. That is 3 days. Yeah. Like, okay, I get it. You want these guys to rest, but there's no reason tomorrow night can't be game number 2.
Yeah, and they've had them playing on the strenuous schedule and the back-to-backs all year. Why are you giving them rest now? Like,
after they've been off for almost a week anyway.
Right, exactly. Like, and guys lose, like, part of the step with that. I think we've lost some. Like, I woke up this morning and saw a couple, critiques on some of the defensive lapses for both these teams. Just the basketball kind of dips down a little bit. So yeah, the NBA, like, what do we? I get that you want to stretch it into June,
sure,
but what are we doing?
Yeah, we're gonna touch July 4th one of these years. I feel like.
Right. Yeah, no kidding. Like, and these guys, like, all the guys in Cabo are going to come back next season and win the title because they've had so much rest in the offseason.
Well, Joe, man, it's good to hear from you again, and I look forward to talking to you next week.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Appreciate you having me on, and, I have enjoyed my sabbatical. Appreciate you letting me go off and take a little break.
That'll do it for the Extra Point. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Friday here on The Game. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head along with you. Solo for a little bit here. We got our wires crossed a little bit when it came to scheduling for today. Did not realize that Wes was once again going to be out at Shane Beamer football camp today, so he will not be here with me today. I believe Chris Clark is set to join me at the bottom of the hour. We'll talk some camp. We'll talk some recruiting. Obviously, another big recruiting weekend coming up this weekend as we navigate our way, obviously through the summer months, where the on-field football stuff for the current South Carolina Gamecock team not quite as prevalent, but preparing for the future is always going to be at the forefront and a topic of conversation when it comes to bringing guys in. Scouting future talents. Saw some guys that got offered yesterday out at the camp. For some of those classes a little bit farther down the line. Of course, Wes and Chris do a phenomenal job covering all that kind of stuff over on GamecockCentral.com. So certainly stay up to date on everything happening this weekend with what those guys are talking about over there. But I want to get into a couple things here, flying solo for these first couple segments. And before I get into that, though, I do have to give a special birthday shout out to my nephew Theo, who is turning 11 years old coming up on Sunday. We aren't going to have a show on Sunday, obviously, so I can't give him a shout out on his actual birthday on the radio. I'll see him on that day, but wanted to give an opportunity to say happy birthday, Theo, and can't wait to see you this weekend, buddy. So, summer birthdays are the best, right? Because you not to worry about being in school, get to relax, have fun, hang out with friends, stay up late, eat ice cream and candy and all those kind of things, as opposed to, oh man, my birthday's on a school day and I got to go to school that day or go to school the next day or whatever it may be. So having a summer birthday, as somebody that has a summer birthday, I can assure you is definitely the best time to have one of those. Diving in Gamecock football stuff, we know, and I've talked about it a lot this offseason already, we still got 86 days until the season kicks off. And don't worry, I will ask Chris one of the trivia questions coming up a little bit later on in the hour, see if he can get back on the board after Wes kind of passed him. I gave him a half a point for getting all those North Carolina teams right the other day when I was, talking to him. But we'll have our 86 days to kick off trivia question coming up later in the hour. Don't worry. I'm very interested to see how many points both these guys can score before the season does ultimately get here. But as we've talked about so much this offseason, South Carolina is at the forefront of a lot of different discussions when it comes to previewing the season. I was just looking at Andy and Ari of On 3. They were talking on their podcast yesterday about, sleeper picks and conferences, right? Especially in the SEC and the Big Ten. And South Carolina was on that list. And, they cite the usual. Shane Beamer coming off of a strong year. Dylan Stewart doing what he did on defense as a true freshman. And, of course, Lenore Sellers in his first year as a starter going out there and in a lot of ways living up to the billing, especially as the, season wore on last year. And as we know, given the fact that he was a redshirt freshman 2 seasons ago back in 2023, if Lenore Sellers balls out and has a phenomenal year, there's a chance he could be in the NFL this time next year, right? There's a chance that he could, go pro, potentially be a first-round pick. If you look at a lot of the mock drafts, you will routinely see him somewhere within that top 10. I saw one that had him in like a late first-round pick, but I think that was kind of a devil's advocate type of, first-round, draft projection. But still, he's thought of as one of the better quarterbacks in college football, right up there with Arch Manning, right up there with DJ Lagway, all those guys. In fact, you should think of him as ahead of a guy like Arch Manning because he's not played significant amount of games yet to really know what his true full potential is. But him and Lagway kind of eye to eye in a lot of ways because they obviously showed tons of promise in the times they got to play last year. Obviously, DJ Lagway a little bit more when it came to his injury. But as we look ahead to the future, whether it be next year or in the years to come, and Lenore Sellers making that transition into the NFL, which, of course, hopefully that means he has a lot of success at South Carolina before he gets there. Todd McShay and Steve Munch on their podcast the other day were talking about Lenore Sellers, dedicated an entire episode to him. They're doing quarterback breakdowns as the season or as the off season goes along, and the episode the other day was all about Lenore Sellers, and we did play one clip kind of talking about what the season needed to look like for him, and Wes and I reacted to that the other day. But I have another clip here of them making pro comparisons for Lenore Sellers as he does aspire and eventually will get to the NFL. And here's what they had to say when they look at Lenore Sellers, guys that he reminds them of.
I can't coach what he's got, man. This guy's a bigger Jalen Hurts in my mind. And I want you to remember where Jalen was at Alabama as in his first year as a starter. There were flashes, there were some amazing things, but he was a hell of a lot better as a runner than he was as a passer, right? He's 2 inches taller than Jalen. He's 20 pounds heavier than Jalen, yet he's just as fast and he's just as sudden. And when he's playing with confidence, he's just as creative. That's it. Like, that creativity is so dangerous, and you can't coach that. Okay?
You can't.
You can't coach what Jalen has. You can't coach what LaNorris has. You can't coach what Lamar has. You just can't. You either have it or you don't.
I'm ready to go, I guess, bigger. Jalen Hurts is awesome, so don't get me wrong. I think this kid could be Josh Allen. Like, I see Josh Allen because I see that frame. He's that much bigger. When you look at how big this guy is and what he can do.
I just think he's twitchier and doesn't have the arm of Josh. I think he has a damn good arm.
Oh, man, I don't know.
Josh Allen's arm?
Yes. I don't know, man. I know it's the ceiling. I know Lenore Sellers isn't there yet. I get it. But the raw ability, the tools, the talent, I mean, it's exciting.
That is exciting. You want to talk about a couple guys that are obviously great to be mentioned in the same conversation with Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, and they did throw in Lamar Jackson in there as well, and when kind of the comparisons were coming up. So as you heard Steve Munch mention there at the very end, that's where kind of the ceiling is for how good he can be, not only at the college level, but getting on the NFL level. And I get it. Most people here aren't, concerned about what he's going to do in the NFL. It's what you're going to do here in, here in college in your second year as a starter. But they bring up the Jalen Hurts thing. And I go back to reading a lot of the things when he was coming out of high school, out of South Florence. And that was a comparison that they were making early on in his, recruiting process and all those kind of things. And we've seen Jalen Hurts get even better since then. So it is nice to hear that those comparisons are obviously still being made. But what is interesting, I feel like, when you make that Jalen Hurts comparison, yes, both those guys, again, very, very twitchy when it comes to using their legs, I think is the development and the improvement from one year to the next. And this goes for Jalen Hurts not only at the college level, but at the professional level, as well. Let's go back to his time in college. At Alabama, 2016, where they played for and lost the national championship to Clemson. 2,700 yards, 23 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, sacked 19 times, ran for 13 touchdowns. 2017, now he didn't play as much, dealt with some injuries, I believe, and also did get benched in the national championship game, for Tua Tagovailoa. But his interceptions went way down. Went from 9 to 1 in 2017. Had about half a more yard per carry average in 2017. So small little things that you see improvements in from Jalen Hurts from one year to the next. And then you translate him over into the NFL and you see something very, very, similar. Going from, and again, he wasn't a full starter the entire year back in 2020, but go back to 2021 and 2022. 2021, okay, solid year, 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. 2022, once again, cuts back on the interceptions, ticks up the touchdowns, 22 to only 6. So you saw him, Jalen Hurts, that is, make improvements year to year after getting a lot of experience as a starter in his first go-around there. And that's what you hope is going to be the same kind of deal when it comes to LaNorris Sellers. And again, as you would expect, especially for a kid he was 19 years old or something along those lines last year as a redshirt freshman, there's going to be growing pains. There's going to be getting up to speed. But you saw, and I bring this up a lot, and I hate to keep banging on this drum, but it stands out so much to me. You saw the improvements in the back half of the year where he really rounded into form. And it wasn't like everybody around him started suddenly playing better either. He just figured out a better way to play the quarterback position. And again, a lot of that goes back to getting out of sacks. Because again, he was getting sacked left and right in 6 ways from Sunday, it felt like early on in the season. And then finally, he just, I don't know where that switch finally flipped, but that elusiveness just went way up. And he became so slippery, almost impossible to bring down, and gave us so many phenomenal moments, including, of course, that touchdown run against Clemson that we're going to remember forever as perhaps his most defining moment, and hopefully he does something this year that's even more special than that. But up to this point, that is his defining moment as a quarterback at South Carolina. And you see those improvements happen to where, again, I hope that's the starting point for 2025 to where he's even that much better by the end of this upcoming season. And again, if he is that good, then he may go off to the NFL, which hopefully means South Carolina had a good season itself in the process. But the big difference between Jalen Hurts and LaNorris Sellers is the talent around them. And that goes both at the college level and the professional level, because Jalen Hurts has always been surrounded by really, really good talent. Of course, you go back to his time at Alabama, and again, talking about those first 2 years as a starter, Calvin Ridley, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, a very young Devontae Smith, who caught the game-winning touchdown in the national championship from Tua, but he's always had 4- and 5-star wide receivers all around him. He's always had very solid production in the backfield. Josh Jacobs, Najee Harris, Bo Scarborough, Damian Harris, guys like that. When his time at Alabama, and of course you look at him now, he's got Saquon Barkley in the backfield up there in Philadelphia. Always had strong offensive lines when he was at Alabama. Good offensive line when he's up there in Philadelphia, and I think that's where the differences start to come, is that LaNorris Sellers hasn't really had that so far in his time. And again, there are good players on South Carolina's offense around him, but I wouldn't think you'd look at anybody and say right now they're elite, right? And they're head and shoulders above other guys at their positions across the SEC or across college football. Now, yeah, last year, Rocket Sanders was a very good running back, but he was not, the all-SEC, first-teamer from Arkansas a couple years ago necessarily, and he played a very good role in the offense. When we talk about, that Josh Simon ends up becoming his favorite target at tight end because the wide receiver room just wasn't quite where you wanted it to be. Now, again, we hope all those guys that are coming back for this year take significant steps forward to where when we talk about the 2025 South Carolina football team 5-10 years from now, I'm like, man, remember that breakout year that Mazeo Bennett had? And, man, Nick Harbor finally became that dude and all those kind of things, to where we then say, yeah, he did have that talent around him his second go-around. But as of right now, he doesn't. And, again, the offensive line spoke for itself last year. I'm not trying to call people out, but the production was not great. And while the sack numbers went down, that as the season wore on, that was more to do with LaNorris Sellers, again, figuring ways how to get himself out of trouble more than it was the offensive line getting it all together. You know what I mean? And again, you come into this year with a lot of question marks on offense, more than you had a season ago, not even knowing if your expected RB1s even going to be eligible for the season. So he's going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting and carry a lot of this team, at least early on in the season, on his back. Right? And you hope when you have a quarterback as highly touted as him, again, he could go down as the greatest quarterback in South Carolina history. I mean, next to Spencer Rattler when he came in a couple seasons ago, I don't think there's been any other quarterback with as much hype going into a season, certainly not on the short list for a Heisman, like LaNorris Sellers has. And you hope that is the catalyst of the, high tide raises all ships, right? Where he just continues to make everybody else around him better, to where we are talking about this team, winning 9-10 games, being in the college football playoff, flirting with the SEC championship, and all those kind of things that they obviously, want to accomplish. But again, very good company to be compared to Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, and to a lesser degree Lamar Jackson when you talk about pro comparisons for LaNorris Sellers. And if he can play like a combination of all those guys, then it's going to be a very, very fun year for Gamecock football. Super Regionals coming up this weekend, getting rolling. We're actually right at a little under an hour here at the various sites across the country. A lot of conversation this week around the antics of college baseball. We'll dive into that coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Just Tyler hanging out. Chris Clark said to join me a little bit at the bottom of the hour as well on your Friday here on The Game.
Our friends over at Integrated Media can make any of your audio-visual dreams come true at your home. You don't have to use the big box stores. So if you are looking to put a new TV in your home, if you're looking to improve your internet signal, if you're moving, if you're building a new home and you need to have your AV taken care of, you don't have to use those big box stores. You don't have to look at the thousands of different options online. Just give Michael, Nathan, the team at Integrated Media a call, 803-948-8327. They can come out to your home just like they did for me, just like they did for Wes. They can help you out with everything from sourcing the equipment, letting you know what's the best, to professionally installing it for you. If you got dead spots in your home, if you want to extend your Wi-Fi signal outside, if you want to build that new man cave or trick out your patio, they can do it for you. 803-948-8327 or visit their website, integratedmediainc.com.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler flying solo for the next couple minutes. Chris Clark will check in with us at the bottom of the hour. We'll talk some recruiting. Big official visit weekend once again, as we going to be having those pretty routinely over the course of the summer as Coach Beamer looks to shore up the 26 class, build the 27, 28, 29. Who knows how many different classes will be on campus this weekend and at these camps and all those kind of things. As of course recruiting never stops. As I say, ABC always be recruiting, because that's the world of college football we live in. And if you take a breath when it comes to recruiting, somebody else is going to come in and snatch that talent that you were going after. So we'll talk about that with Chris at the bottom of the hour. Of course, busy weekend on a lot of fronts. Of course, you have Game 2 of the NBA Finals coming up on Sunday. Women's College World Series goes to their Game 3 winner-take-all tonight after Texas Tech won game number 2 against Texas last night. So that should be fun, 8 o'clock on ESPN. And then in about 40 minutes, we get Super Regional action rolling across the nation. 4 series getting going today, 4 series getting going tomorrow. Arizona, North Carolina, first pitch at noon. Miami and Louisville, first pitch at 3. Florida State, Oregon State, first pitch at 6. Coastal Carolina and Auburn, first pitch at 9. And then the other 4 series, which are Tennessee, Arkansas, West Virginia, LSU, UTSA and UCLA, and Murray State and Duke all get rolling tomorrow. And those will carry through, if necessary, all the way to Monday to set the field for next weekend's beginning of the Men's College World Series. And, you know, the Super Regional weekend, I think, got more attention than it has in recent memory for me outside of this Columbia bubble, because obviously Columbia takes baseball very seriously. But I looked at some of the national conversations around college baseball that I don't really see a lot. And yes, Kevin O'Sullivan doing what he did had a lot to do with that, and his outburst that, you know, Kevin Schnall of Coastal Carolina scolded him for, and rightfully so, you know, making himself look like a fool as, you know, Florida got eliminated by ECU out there in the Conway Regional. But there's a lot of conversation as well about this, the flashiness of college baseball too, and people's thoughts on that. I have this clip here, and Preston sent this to me, but if you haven't seen it, Chipper Jones, former Atlanta Brave, great, obviously baseball Hall of Famer, spent a lot of time watching college baseball this weekend and talked about teams playing the game the right way, right? And you're going to hear Chip Towers of Dog Nation Daily talking about this in reference to not only the Georgia baseball program, but a lot of baseball programs around the SEC and the greater scope of college baseball. Here is that show from yesterday.
Chipper Jones made a lot of news within the college baseball world yesterday for something that he tweeted. He says, I spent quite a bit of time watching college baseball this weekend. I'll only watch a select few teams from here on out. The reason? They've got coaches that respect the game and their opponents and demand the same of their players. Any team that doesn't wear the uniform correctly, taunts the other team, has a coach that condones this behavior, is a disgrace to the game. This tweet got a lot of comments, and there's a lot of SEC baseball fans in the comment section like, wait, are you talking about us? Because when it comes to not wearing the uniform the right way, taunting the opponents, there are a lot of baseball teams in the SEC who are like, well, maybe this could be us, including certainly a good number of Georgia fans who are like, wait, is Chipper bashing our team here right now? So I think that's all this goes to show you is college baseball is wild. It is wild. And it's one of those things that because, you know, I think there's sort of an artificial lid put on the sport's popularity. I don't think anybody in charge wants college baseball to be any more popular than it currently is. I think that just creates all kinds of headaches in the revenue sharing world if it gets more popular than it currently is. So because it has sort of a lid on its popularity, it also kind of goes unsupervised and kind of chaperoned. And so the stuff that you see during these games is just wild.
And again, that's Chip Towers of Dog Nation Daily. Brings up a lot of interesting points there. And yeah, when it comes to not wearing the uniforms properly, Georgia, I think, is the biggest offender of that. If you watch their regional this past weekend, I mean, half those guys had the jersey unbuttoned all the way down to their belly buttons, essentially. A lot of bat flips, those kind of things. And, you know, if you've never taken the time to watch college baseball, tuning in for a regional weekend, if you hadn't watched the entire year, may really surprise you. But I feel like it's something that if you've been ingrained with it for a while, you're kind of used to at this point. Like, okay, there's bat flips and you know, there's second base celebrations when you hit doubles and first base celebrations when you get walks and all those kind of things. And, you know, I think for a lot of us, it's just become the normal part of the game. But it is interesting. Again, Chipper Jones mainly pays attention to, you know, Major League Baseball and the Atlanta Braves and all that kind of stuff. And again, I love Chipper, and I love when he's on the broadcast and gives his insight. And, of course, he's an Atlanta legend and, you know, first ballot Hall of Famer, and rightfully so. But it is interesting when people like that do tune in for the first time in a while and kind of notice those kind of things, right? And, look, baseball should be fun. I'm not in the camp of somebody that thinks, you need to go out there and just keep your head down, do your job, and you know, don't celebrate until you have the trophy at the end of the whole thing, because that's the only thing that's worth celebrating. I'm not in that camp. I do think maybe some teams dial it up a little too much, right? And can distract you from the task at hand at times, which can be detrimental to you. Obviously, you know, I look again, since we're kind of talking about Georgia here, that back and forth game they had with Oklahoma State on Sunday that led to them getting eliminated. which was a walk-off, home run in the bottom of the ninth there. They lost 11-9, if I'm thinking correctly. Every time Georgia got a hit, and Georgia was hitting home runs themselves, it was bat flips. It was, it was taunting. It was, again, the celebrations. And, again, you got the jerseys hanging out and all those kind of things. I do think at some point it can be detrimental to teams. And I'm not saying that's why Georgia lost necessarily, but it's got those kind of things that I do think you have to be careful with. Now, I'm not to the part of being too extreme with it. And one thing that came out in John Whittle's article the other week, detailing the behind the scenes of Coach Maneri's first year here at South Carolina, is that he severely cut back on the celebrations. I don't believe they had any kind of dugout prop this year. If I remember correctly, again, they've done like the military helmet and all those kind of things in years past. Maybe I'm wrong on this. I don't recall anything like that in the dugout this year. When the guys did get to second base, I think they were allowed like the thumbs up or something like that. So he really kind of curtailed a lot of the creativity and celebrations and stuff like that. And I think that's wrong too. Like I feel like there needs to be kind of a happy medium where you can celebrate, you can have fun, because baseball's a game at the end of the day. It's meant to be fun. I don't think we have to, treat this like, like we're rocket scientists or anything along those lines. But I do think there's a balance where, there are some teams that do take a little bit too far, and there are some teams that don't have enough fun. So where do you kind of find that balance in the middle? And again, when you and you'll see this in super regionals probably this weekend as well, like the bat flips and stuff, right? If you're carrying the bat all the way down to first base, if your opponent's on the first base side and you drop it there, you're gonna get, the game's gonna stop, and the umpire's gonna come out and he's gonna warn the dugout, warn the coach, and all those kind of things, and that's ultimately gonna slow the game down, which none of us want to see. But I expect chippiness, right? And that's kind of where a lot of that comes in baseball, is the way, because it's not a physical contact sport, and it's not from, hey, he hit me too hard, in a football game, or he fouled me too hard in a basketball game. Like, you're not touching people too much in baseball, so that's how things get under people's skin. And it'll be interesting to see how much of those things kind of rear their ugly head this weekend. And I hope we don't have another coach outburst like we had with Kevin O'Sullivan at Florida this past weekend. But one thing that Chip said there is that there is kind of a ceiling, maybe like a cap on how popular college baseball can get, and the powers that be might be afraid that it gets too popular, because then you start messing with, revenue sharing distribution. And that is an interesting point, because baseball, again, is a sport that most teams in the SEC take very seriously. And again, Carolina's going to, put a significant chunk of their revenue sharing towards it in hopes to build it back to what it once was. But if sport gets more popular and more eyes are on it, TV contracts are bigger and all those kind of things, then maybe it shifts. I don't know. But that's an interesting point that I've not heard anybody bring up, is, that they might be afraid that baseball, and to a degree softball as well, might get too popular and start threatening some of the other revenue sports like baseball and football, or basketball and football, which I don't think they ever will. But I'm be interested to see. And last night's game, or Tuesday night or Wednesday night's game 1 of the Women's College World Series, most watched ever. So you see the ratings tick up. We'll see what the College World Series looks like. But the sports, when you talk about baseball and softball, do kind of seem to be on the rise. And again, I feel like everybody kind of has an opinion when it comes to the celebrations, the antics that go along with it, that to a degree do give it its charm. So again, I don't want to see it go away completely. I do think there are some teams that could maybe reel it in a little bit, because they might step over those boundaries just a touch. But again, there's no commissioner of this, and I'm certainly not that person. So who knows if that's ever going to happen. We'll talk some football coming up next. Chris Clark going to join me on the Love Chevrolet phone lines, and we'll detail the very busy upcoming recruiting weekend as the summer rolls along. And obviously, recruiting always important this time of year, as it is all year long. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head along with you on your Friday here on The Game.
All right, guys, you know what? This show presented by our friends over at Firehouse Subs. Almost lunchtime. Time for you to hit up firehousesubs.com or the Firehouse Subs app. Hopefully you already got that thing downloaded. I hit up some Firehouse Subs earlier this week. Went with my favorite, the brisket add bacon. But if you're wanting to try something new, we've been telling you about the new Hot Ones featured zesty garlic hook and ladder and spicy dill hook and ladder. Of course, the spicy one is so spicy that they actually have a little disclaimer here telling you that you should not consume it if you can't handle the Carolina Reaper. But if that's something you like, if you like to kind of push the limits, this one is a 10 on the hot scale here. That pickle is what kind of puts it over the top in terms of heat, soaked in the Last Dab Reaper Edition Hot One sauce. If you want something a little bit more mild but still good, hit up the zesty garlic hook and ladder. All that for you now at Firehouse Subs.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head flying solo in studio as Wes Mitchell is out at another edition of Shane Beamer Football Camp, and we'll get the full report on that coming up on Monday. But joining me now from parts unknown, as he's been out enjoying himself for the week, Chris Clark. Good to hear from you, man. Good to hear that you're enjoying yourself and trying to relax a little bit this week. Though, when it comes to recruiting especially, there's never any downtime to actually relax, right?
That's right, Tyler. I mean, Wes and I were on the phone last night at, 8:30, 9 o'clock talking about recruiting stuff. So trust me, I have been sufficiently made fun of, roasted, shunned by various people for being out of town as soon as camp opens and the first big official visit weekend. But I have been working here from parts unknown remotely a little bit, but I appreciate everybody working with me. But yeah, it's been, man, there's a lot going on, right? And kind of like the end of May, it was kind of like the calm before the storm, because we all knew that, you know, unofficial visits, official visits, and camp season was about to start up in earnest, and it's here. And there's already been a lot to track, and that's just going to continue throughout this weekend for sure.
And again, another big visit weekend coming up, starting today, running through Sunday. And this one in particular, I think, is even more interesting to a lot of people, because I'll go back to Steve Wiltfong's prediction the other day, a Fong bomb, as we like to call it, where he predicted the, at one time, commit to South Carolina, Landon Duckworth. It's trending back towards being a Gamecock commit once again, and he will be in town this weekend on another visit.
Yeah, I mean, the Landon Duckworth situation is actually kind of fascinating for several reasons. There's kind of layers to this thing, Tyler, because, you know, he committed so early. It was when Jody Wright was on staff, actually, at South Carolina, now the head coach at Murray State. Go Racers. We've had him on the program before. And, you know, he had some ties to Jackson, Alabama, where Landon Duckworth is from. And so they got him committed, and we heard a lot of good things. And, man, you look at this kid on film as a football player. He's a really strong basketball player, just super athletic, a huge upside. And, you know, the word freak gets tossed around a little bit too much in recruiting circles, but, you know, it has been tossed out to me, and you can kind of see it when you look at him. But he committed so early, you got the sense of like, all right, like, is this going to stick? A, it's early. B, he's just kind of coming into his own as a prospect, and you got the sense that other schools are going to really continue to come after him and offer him. And, of course, as soon as he committed to South Carolina, that happened, right? You had Ole Miss jump in, a bunch of other schools. And so he did reopen his recruitment when that happened. It was far from shocking. But then something else happened that, you know, you don't see a ton. I mean, sometimes when you see guys decommit, you see the school that he was originally committed to not even on the radar. That happened with Peyton Dyer, the DB who was in this class, committed to South Carolina early, decommitted. Gamecocks didn't even make his top 5.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day. Sometimes you see a guy decommit, and he'll still include the school, but it's kind of like a token, you know, inclusion.
Sure.
And then sometimes you see what's happened with Duckworth, where you actually get a legitimate shot of getting the guy back in the class. It doesn't happen a ton. You can't call it, you know, common, but that's what's happened here. And he's been a guy they've continued to prioritize. Once Mike Shula was promoted to the OC position, you know, he kept in touch, and the staff really likes Duckworth and vice versa. So it is definitely heated back up to where you can see a legitimate chance for South Carolina here.
And looking at some of these other guys are going to be on campus this weekend. Again, people do like to focus a lot on the higher star guys. Of course, Landon Duckworth being a 4-star and one of the better interior defensive linemen in the country, and Aiden Harris, along with his twin brother Andrew, also going to be on the list this weekend as well.
These are two more guys that, you know, if you're talking about some of the national and industry-wide buzz that's been created, these two guys absolutely have some when it comes to South Carolina. They've been on campus multiple times. I think this weekend is going to be critical to potentially finishing this thing off in favor of the Gamecocks. And, you know, Aiden Harris is a guy that, as you said, Tyler, he's one of the more highly rated guys on the board. The staff definitely wants his brother Andrew as well, albeit at a different position as a linebacker. The two have been thought of as kind of a package deal, right? But again, the Gamecocks want both, just to reiterate that. So they've had a lot of buzz, you know, really throughout the spring and heading into the summer months. And I think if this weekend goes well, that's not to say that they'll, you know, hey, Sunday, Monday, be on the lookout for a commitment from one or both. But I think it's entirely possible. Regardless, I think this weekend's going to be critical to potentially, you know, being able to seal the deal with these two guys. And, you know, they would be, you know, you look at them, you look at Duckworth, some of these other guys that are on campus this weekend, some of the guys that were on campus this past weekend or coming for the third visit weekend. Shane Beamer and his staff have a chance, after kind of a lull in the spring, to really have a huge summer, and this second weekend is going to be critical to that.
And it's just as important not only to bring guys in that aren't committed and hopefully, further yourself down the path there, but also having guys on campus that are already committed to you and continue to stay in good graces with them. One of those being right from up the road in Hemingway at Carvers Bay, 4-star offensive lineman Zion Giles, going to be on campus this weekend as well.
Yeah, a great early get for South Carolina. A national level recruit. Clemson wanted him, Bama, Georgia, a bunch of out-of-state programs, a bunch of blue blood programs. And, saw Zion Giles in camp last summer at South Carolina before his recruitment had really, really taken off. And you just look at this guy and how big he is and how well he can move. Just a big upside player. And I don't think he's going to be, a question we get a lot is, hey, is this guy going to help, in terms of recruiting other guys? And I don't know if he'll be super, super forward-facing with that. We actually asked him that the day that he committed earlier this year. And, he had a few O-linemen, in-state guys that he was going to try to help with a little bit. Always good to have someone who, had a bunch of other national-level offers, great offers on campus who can mingle with some of the uncommitted guys and say, hey, here's why I picked the Gamecocks. Here's why it's the place for me. That certainly helps. But he's definitely a big, big piece of this 2026 class.
Another one here we'll take a look at. It's getting attention from a lot of different high-profile schools around the country, staying in that 4-star range. Also on the offensive line, Kamari Blair out of, I don't have a city for him here, but somebody that, again, has kind of been high on the list for the Gamecocks as well.
Yeah, so Kamari's from Clarksville, which is near Nashville. And, a guy who's just really shot up recruiting boards, not only for schools, but, in the recruiting rankings nationally. On3 has him in the top 225. The number 23 offensive tackle in the country. He's a 6'6", 280-pound guy with length, with athleticism. Another guy, you like with your offensive tackles to have that basketball background. They can move well. He's got that. And so he's a guy that's blown up a little bit, in the earlier months of 2025 here. Someone that South Carolina's been on for a while. Again, they've had him on campus before. This isn't his first rodeo in Columbia, but I think this visit is going to be, again, really important to kind of charting the course of his recruitment. Can South Carolina be, stay a major factor? I think they are right now.
Yep.
He's got some other officials, Tennessee, Ole Miss, FSU. He already took one to Wisconsin. Vandy's been in the mix. There's some competition, but the Gamecocks are in the mix here for Blair.
Yeah, and big and busy recruiting weekend once again. Wes is out right now at another Shane Beamer football camp as they're looking ahead to some of these guys, or some of the later classes as well. And quickly, I did want to note, they offered Brady Quinn yesterday. No, not that Brady Quinn, a class of 2028 quarterback Brady Quinn. It is funny how sometimes we can recycle names, right?
It is. And Tyler, we're to the point, even though there's no relation. We've got guys, getting offers that, they're just making us feel old, man.
Yeah, right.
I think I covered that guy's recruitment. Now he has a sign. This is bad.
How old would a 2028 kid, what year would they have been born in? It's after.
Well, you're younger than me, so, you're going to, what would that be, like 20,
oh, man.
I don't know, 2010, right?
Yeah, that would have to be.
If they're graduating when they're about 18, yeah.
My God.
That's insane.
2010. Yeah. I was in high school at that point in time. Wow. That's crazy. Yeah, making us feel old. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the hour. I do have to ask you the trivia question of the day. I do have to let you know that Wes has surpassed you this week while you've been out, so you got a chance to jump back ahead of him.
Well, I would hope he went ahead. If I don't even participate, he should go ahead. If he just gets he just needed one or two.
He got 1.5. I'll tell you how that happened coming up next. How about that?
Oh, let's do it.
It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Chris along with you on your Friday here on The Game.
Our friends over at Game Day Men's Health can help you as a man reclaim your vitality by optimizing hormone levels. They specialize in TRT, or testosterone replacement therapy, which will help boost your energy and strength. And they're a lot different than other clinics that do similar things. They have in-house labs that can deliver your results in just 15 minutes. They're conveniently located in Northeast Columbia near I-77 and Two Notch Road. Comfortable man cave style clinics with TVs and refreshments while you wait. Also great, they don't use any long-term contracts. Flexible plans tailored to your needs. TRT tests available to check your levels with absolutely no obligation, and then ongoing monitoring, committed to your success with expert guidance. You can get started by going to GameDayMen'sHealth.com/North-Columbia. Again, located just off I-77, or give them a call, 803-265-3161.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head back in studio. Chris Clark joining me on the Love Chevrolet phone lines for a couple more minutes before we get out of here on this Friday. And Chris, before I let you go back to trying to enjoy your relaxation this week, we do have to answer a trivia question for the day because we are 86 days away from kickoff. I told you Wes surpassed you on, I think it was Wednesday when it was 88 days. I asked the question of how many teams from the state of North Carolina did the Gamecocks play that year. He guessed 5 correctly and was able to name all 5. So I felt like that warranted half a point for being able to name all of them unprompted.
He He Googled that. I don't know. I will accept the results under protest.
Okay. Well,
I'm gonna need to.
We'll do a recount if you want me to.
I would like that very much. There's some hanging chads.
But Wes is out in the heat, hopefully not complaining, at camp today. So you have an opportunity to jump back over him with today's question. Are you ready?
I'm not confident, but I am ready.
We go back to 1986. South Carolina only won 3 games back in 1986. Was their point differential positive, negative, or even?
Okay, a multiple choice. This is better, actually.
I figured some of my questions were too hard, so I want to give you options.
Okay, now let me make sure. Clarification question. Point differential over the course of the season.
Yes, over the course of the season.
So
yes.
wins and losses.
Wins and losses from they played Miami first to Clemson last. Over all those games, did they score more, less, or even with their opponents?
You know, I think it would be fascinating if it was even. I'm going to go like the trick question route and say that even though they just won 3 games, it was still a positive point differential.
You would be correct. They outscored their opponents 313 to 287, and there were 2 ties that season as well. That probably helped out.
But remarkable.
Well, that's the thing is like when they won big. They beat Western Carolina by 21 points, beat East Carolina by 35, beat Wake Forest by 27, but they also lost by 17 to Florida State and 20 to Miami with some tight games, 5-point loss to Georgia, 3 points to number 3 Nebraska, 1 point loss to number 16 NC State, and tying with Clemson at the end of the year.
I mean, that, and by the way, tying in a rivalry game
that's
should have never been allowed.
No, there should have been overtime specifically for that game.
That's so bad. And look, there's a lot of North Carolina teams in there, too, which, I mean, South Carolina still plays teams from the state of North Carolina, whether it's UNC. They've had NC State on the schedule in the last several years. They played, Western at one point. It was a while back that they played them. I mean, East Carolina, of course, Shane Beamer's first year. That was kind of a famous game, but played 5 in 1 year on the previous question was kind of crazy. Kudos to West for nailing that.
We also figured up yesterday in 1987, or I think it was that same year, they traveled less miles over the course of the entire season than they did for one trip out to Norman, Oklahoma last year. One way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Times have
not
changed.
as bad as the Big Ten, though.
No, not as bad as Big Ten. We're not going to California for conference games or, Piscataway, New Jersey, but who knows? Maybe we'll get there one day.
Okay, so now let's have the official. Now, how did West get 1.5, by the way?
Because I gave him credit for naming all 5 teams. That's where it came from.
Okay, there you go.
So you are up 2 to 1.5 now. So when we get both you guys in here, it's going to be a knockdown drag out for the rest of the summer.
All right, sounds good. I look forward to it.
See you next week, man.
Thanks, Tyler.
All right, that'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show. Myself and Jack Beltry up next on your Friday here on the game.